welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be fitting a brake caliper to the passenger side rear of my vehicle because I MOT'd it a couple of months ago and I realised the handbrake lever wasn't returning to its rest position as it should be doing. And when it does that, it affects the foot brake slightly and also the handbrake operation itself. It passed the MOT still well within the requirements, but it's not a ideal situation. So here's a new brake caliper. It's a reconditioned item, so that will fit like that. The lever is just in there. So without further ado, I shall crack on. I'll pick this up in a minute. Okay, as with every video, I'm just going to give a rundown of what tools I'm hopefully going to be needing today and no more. So, electric ratchet, brake pipe spanner, 13 and 14mm, 14mm spanner, ratchet, 7mm Allen key, long one, 19mm socket, 7mm Allen key socket, 4mm Allen key socket, pry bar, small flat screwdriver, a breaker bar and a locking wheel nut. I'll show this caliper. So this is an original Saab item, it's not a reproduction, so it's been reconditioned, handbrake mechanism inside has been redone, new seals, new piston, so hopefully this should do the trick. So pick the cap from behind and pull it up gently without marking the wheel. Down there. Give it a go with the electric gun, see if it will release these wheel bolts. You do have a tendency on these and on 9000s to sort of seize up onto the hood, so you need to crack them off with a breaker bar sometimes. So I'll try this lecky gun that I've got. God, this road is noisy, the morons driving up and down ridiculously fast. I'm using a parkside gun which has proven to be pretty good when I've used it in the past. That locking nut straight off. Struggling with that one, and that one, and that one, as I thought. So I shall get the breaker bar, crack it off before I send it up. Right. Oh God! So they don't put these on terribly tight, but they do it. The tendency is just to lock up like this. I don't know why they do it. Tight. Okay. Right, I can jack it up safely now. The car locks in reverse, as you know, with Saab 900s and 99s, so handbrake's off at the moment, so the car won't roll anywhere. No, I'm not using axle stands. I like to live dangerously, so just the way I roll. Tell that disc is getting a little hot because it has a bit of orange into it. It's not being seizing on as such, not that I could tell. I mean, maybe minimally. When it's sat on a flat and you're rolling, you can feel it just grabbing. The handbrake lever is there. If you watch this, you can return a touch, which means it's sticking. These calipers are made by ATE, standard calipers on this and discs. They are quite small discs on these, the same as Saab 9000. They're not really up to the job with the power of these cars because they can get up to some speeds, and where they do work and they get a good pedal feel, the actual strength of the braking isn't massive on them. Relatively small brake pads, same as you find on a Volvo 440, 460, 480. Even though the caliper design is slightly different. Got braided steel brake lines on this by Goodrich, so they're stainless steel so they don't rust on the ferrules. The only issue is I can't clamp this, so when I'm taking it off I'll just have to put a rag underneath it to catch the fluid. Before I actually unbolt the caliper from the carrier, I'm just going to see if I can crack off these brake lines. So very gently like that. Okay, so I know that's relatively loose now. Pop the dust covers off the back of the 7mm Allen key slider bolts. It's in a pry bar. Why is this one fighting me? There we go. Spring clip at the front of the caliper. Pry bar in that, just to move this back a bit. There we go. Release it, work it out that way with a bit of pressure, that's off. Okay, at the back of this caliper here, which is at this point on here, is a 14mm sort of a grub bolt. It's like a very short bolt. So you've got to crack that off, take it all the way out. It's got a copper washer on the end of it to prevent dirt and any fluid leaks from entering or releasing from the caliper. So take that out. So it's a little tiny little thing with a copper washer on it. And in the back of there is an adjuster for the handbrake. So you put that, well, first of all I'm going to release this handbrake cable. Okay, so the cable's just releases by flicking it out, so pulling it out of the round hole there, which is cast into the body of the caliper. You have problems with the rubber catching on these, stopping them from releasing, so I'll just gently tease that through. There we go, that's released. Now that's released, I can get a better access to the back of this. So socket goes in the back, put the ratchet on it. Where's the ratchet disappear to? There it is. Release that a few turns, not too much, otherwise you'll wind it off the mechanism. Maybe 4 or 5 turns, something like that. And you put the pry bar just between the pad and the caliper. I mean, this caliper isn't working properly, so it may not release like it should do. We'll give it a go anyway. There we go. Right, that's released enough that now. Okay, so the next step is the 7mm slider bolts, which is one there. Crack that off. Easier said than done. Oh. There we go. That's that one. Bottom one. Oh, I'm going to knock the camera over then. Right, for speed, get the electric ratchet on it. Right, these sliders do stick a little bit with build-up of rubber on these bits here, but they just pull out completely, as so. They're not too bad actually. Yeah, I'm doing this one on the floor today in the forecourt because there's 3 vehicles in there and I really can't be arsed moving them out. And you don't need a ramp to do just one side. Okay, so that releases. Take the outer pad out first, and then the inner one. Because if you take the inner one out first, it won't come out because the pins on the back, the spring clips, will not allow it. Right, these pads are in really good condition. They haven't been toasted and ended up looking like Weetabix. They're still in good fettle, so they can be reused. Okay, so now it's a case of unwinding that hydraulic line and winding it into the back of the new caliper. As I said, I haven't got the ability to clamp the line, so it will drip a bit of fluid down. There we go. A little tight. It's got a span on it. Let's work it a couple of times to loosen it. So it's stainless steel going into cast. Sometimes when you have aluminium calipers, you have the issues of the union sees it in because the aluminium corrodes. It causes a chemical reaction between the steel and the alloy. You end up seizing in there, but not the problem with these. The later new generation 9.3s have the aluminium calipers that share with the Vauxhall Vectra, and very similar to a Ford Focus, Jaguar, Mondeo and stuff like that, and they're can be problematic. Right, wind this one in. Get the thread the first time, hopefully. Come on. Oh god. There we go. Right. Spin that on. Okay. Not lost too much fluid, no mess on the floor, not a great deal anyway. Right, I'm keeping this original ATE dust cover. It's got ATE written on it. And the other one's just a generic reconditioned type thing that's been used on it. I'll just put that back on there because I've got plenty of dust covers in my toolbox. Oh, right, okay. Let's have a look. There's a little bit of corrosion on the carrier. Not much though. So I shall just take this tiny little pry bar and just scrape off anything excess. And they've actually lasted really well. Original carriers to the car. 350,000 miles and they're still in better condition than a lot of cars that are like 10 years old or less. Brake cleaner on it maybe. There we go. Right, not really much to clean off there. Disc of light. Yeah, you've got to check the discs for scoring if they've been sticking on the calipers. Sometimes they can score the discs and warp them, but there's no issues with that on this one. Clean that brake line up a bit, get it back to its former glory. Oh yeah, nice and clean. Clean this caliper off because it's got a bit of brake fluid dripped on there. Okay, so I'm not going to tighten the union until it's actually fitted to the car. So I'm just going to put some grease on these brake pads and I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, ready to put the pads back in now. The outer pad will go in the carrier. It's got some aluminium 1100 degree worth paste on it. I mean, they're really free in there anyway. You know, I could have got away without putting grease on them, but there's no harm in it. So that motorbike goes past. I hate this road. Anyway, yeah, I don't put grease on the back of the pads. I don't know why people do that because it doesn't make any difference really. I've been doing brakes for like 20 odd years and I've never really bothered doing that, and it's not been any detriment. So curl the caliper round onto there. Yeah, the new caliper has dust covers on those sliders, so just take those off. Sound of a Land Rover Discovery 2 I think it is, V8 going past, noisy thing. Right, so these sliders, just give them a bit of a clean with some brake cleaner, give them a wipe with a cloth. Because I've cleaned these in the past, it's paid off because they've come up clean very easily. You don't have to end up like sanding away or using a wire brush on them or anything like that. Okay, so with the pack, the caliper, comes a sachet of silicone grease, which seems to have just blown away in the wind. How to get it? Okay, so a bit of silicone grease. These bits here that make contact with the rubber. Smear it round, nice and smooth. I should just slot in there quite easily. There we go, first one in. If you end up having sticking sliders on these, They end up wearing the pads wedge shaped because one slider will always be working better than the other, and that's not a good thing. So it just pays to take the extra couple of minutes, clean them up, stop any issues in the future. Okay, that's them two in. It's windy today. I think it's bloody March or April, the weather, the way it is. Okay, that's in there. That's in there. I'll just use a ratchet to manually nip these up. There we go. There we go. Right, now the caliper's attached, I can just nip this brake line up. Okay, you've got to check the orientation on these because they don't swivel in the unions, these brake lines. So if you put it on and it's twisted, you have to loosen it at this end where it attaches to the car to allow it to spin to line up this, but this looks fine. Same applies to a Saab 9000 as well, obviously. Time for the spring clip now. Oh, the dust covers, by the way, I always run with the original ones because again they're ATE branded, and I just like the originality rather than putting the cheap generic ones that come with it, which are just smooth. Okay, that's on. Spring clip goes into the bottom, clip it into the top there, keep the pressure on, push it into the top there. Just give it a bit of a tap, make sure it's seated properly. Okay, right, I was talking about the handbrake adjuster earlier. Now you've got to adjust the mechanism in the caliper now to suit the disc. It is supposed to be self-adjusting, but they never work properly ever, so don't leave it to chance if you're doing one of these. Just take the extra time and do it manually. So socket in the back, again 4mm Allen key, you get it in there where it is, got you. Okay, you just start going clockwise with it, and you will see when it starts to adjust up, the distance between the pad and the disc close up. So spin it, the disc, so it's just grabbing there, so I'll back that off a tiny bit, there we go, and that seems fine. Right, next stage is bleeding. I'll talk through the bleeding process in a minute because this has the unique, to like most cars, ABS system on it, ATE unit, which is used on Fords and Jags and stuff. You don't just pump it up and down on the rear brakes. There's a procedure that you need to do. Nothing fancy, it's just slightly different than the norm. Back in a second. The bleeding procedure on this, I'll just show you what I do. There's a motor in there which pressurizes this bulb, which pressurizes the fluid system. In order to bleed it, you need to have the ignition on. Normally I have an assistant, but for this time I'm using a extendable pole just to keep the pressure on the brake pedal. That's all you need. As long as the pressure's on there and you've got the ignition on, it will pump fluid endlessly through the caliper and into the bleed bottle. Bleed nipple on this one is 7mm. They're normally, I think, 9 or an 11. There's an aftermarket caliper that uses different size bleed nipples, so that's what it is in this one. So I'm just going to put the ignition on now, and hopefully we should have brake fluid coming through this. But yeah, it's filling up very fast. Okay, so there's no bubbles coming out of there, so I shall tighten this up with the ignition on still, and then I'll release the pedal. Okay, that bit's done now. So that bit's done. It's bled up. Take that off there. Do a quick visual for any leaks. I can't see anything leaking on it. Bleed nipple cover back on. After I release the pedal, I pumped it a couple of times and it feels nice and firm. Bleed nipple cover on there. Wipe off any excess grease or anything. Okay, disc is spinning nice and free. So it's just a case of popping the handbrake cable back on now. Pulling that through the hole at the back. By the way, you're not supposed to operate the handbrake lever on the caliper or attach the cable until you've bled the system through, because it can disengage it. That's on there. Let's see if this maybe needs a little bit more adjustment because the lever seems a little bit free. So they're not the best system, these. The Mark 1 MX5 and probably the Mark 2s, I think they use a similar setup on the calipers. We have to adjust them in the back. They've not got the best brakes either. Right. Okay. So that's basically it. One new caliper fitted. So I shall jump in it, pump the pedal and see how we feel with the handbrake. Okay, about 4 clicks. It's releasing okay. Shall top up the fluid level after. Lever seems a little bit sticky still, which indicates that might not be entirely the caliper's issue. Maybe a problem with this cable. Right, so drive it and give you an update if there's any issues in the future.